He mocked her as just a mom until the Special Forces captain arrived, and his face turned pale. The small suburban town of Clearwater, on a breezy Saturday morning, was alive with its usual weekend rhythm. Families strolled through the farmer's market. Kids zipped past on bicycles and local businesses hummed with activity. On the other side of town, however, a different scene unfolded, one that would leave a mark on everyone who witnessed it. Ethan Morales, a 17-year-old high school senior, was parked outside a coffee shop waiting for his mom. His mom, Elena Morales, was running late, but Ethan didn't mind. He was used to it. Most people in town only knew Elena as a quiet, reserved single mother who worked at some vague government job. What they didn't know, what almost no one knew, was that Elena wasn't just some office worker. She was part of the U.S. Army Special Forces, with years of covert missions under her belt. But to Ethan, she was just mom, the woman who packed his lunches, nagged him about his homework, and threatened to ground him if he left dirty dishes in the sink. As Ethan scrolled on his phone, a black and white patrol car pulled up nearby. Out stepped Officer Bradley Kane, one of Clearwater's more notorious cops. Kane had a reputation: arrogant, power-hungry, and always eager to flex his authority, especially on those who couldn't fight back. His peers knew him as Bulldog, because once he locked onto someone, he wouldn't let go, even if he was wrong. Kane spotted Ethan sitting idly in his car and immediately decided it was suspicious. He walked over, tapping on the window with his flashlight even though it was broad daylight. "License and registration," Kane barked, his mirrored sunglasses reflecting Ethan's startled face. Ethan rolled the window down, trying to stay calm. Is there a problem, officer?" "I'm just waiting for my mom," Kane smirked. "Waiting for mommy, huh? What are you, 12? Don't play games with me, kid. This looks like a drug deal spot to me." Ethan's heart raced. "No, sir. I swear I'm just waiting for her to pick up something inside." "You can check if you want," but Kane wasn't listening. He circled the car like a shark, tapping the trunk, peering into the back seat. He relished the unease radiating off Ethan. "What's mommy's name? Maybe I'll ask her myself if she knows her little boy is sitting around looking guilty as hell." Ethan clenched his fists on the steering wheel. "Her name's Elena Morales. She's—" He stopped short, unsure if he should say more. Kane let out a laugh. "Morales? Don't tell me your mom's one of those immigrants who thinks she can boss people around. What is she, a waitress, a maid? No wonder you're sitting here all lost." Heat flooded Ethan's face. He had dealt with insults before, but hearing someone talk about his mom like that boiled his blood. Still, he bit his tongue. He remembered her words, "Never escalate. Stay calm until I get there." Kane leaned down closer to the open window, his grin widening. "Come on, tell me." "What does mommy do? Librarian? Cashier? Something small and sweet? Because she sure isn't important enough for you to sit here acting like a tough guy." Ethan inhaled sharply. Against his better judgment, he muttered, "She's in the military." Kane burst out laughing, slapping the roof of Ethan's car. "Your mom? Military?" "Huh, please. I've seen her around town. That quiet little lady with the grocery bags. Don't make me laugh. What's she gonna do, scold me with her shopping list?" Ethan stayed silent, gripping the wheel tighter. He knew his mom wouldn't want him to argue. But the way Kane's laughter carried, the way a few bystanders turned to look, it cut deep. And then, like fate answering an unspoken prayer, a sleek black SUV pulled into the lot. The driver's door opened and out stepped Elena Morales. She was dressed casually, jeans, a fitted jacket, hair tied back, but the way she moved drew eyes. There was a precision in her steps, a calm authority in her posture. Even without her uniform, Elena radiated the kind of presence that made soldiers snap to attention. Kane noticed her approach and smirked again. "Well, speak of the devil. Here comes mommy. Let's see what she has to say." Ethan felt relief wash over him. "Officer, you really don't want to do this," he said quietly. Kane ignored him. "Sure I do." Elena walked up to the car, her sharp eyes scanning the scene in a split second. Her son's clenched jaw, Kane's smug stance, the bystanders lingering nearby. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Ethan," she said evenly, "step out of the car." Ethan obeyed instantly. Kane puffed out his chest, trying to assert dominance. "Ma'am, I was just questioning your boy here. He looks real suspicious sitting around like this. Probably up to no good." Elena fixed him with a gaze so steady, so unblinking, it was like she was staring straight through his soul. For the first time that morning, Kane faltered. "Is that right?" she said, her voice calm but edged with steel. Kane chuckled nervously, adjusting his belt. "Yeah, well, you know how kids are. I was just doing my job, making sure he wasn't causing trouble." Elena tilted her head slightly. "By harassing him? By mocking me when I wasn't here?" The officer's grin faltered. "Mocking? No, you must have misunderstood." But Elena took one step closer and suddenly the air shifted. She didn't need a badge. She didn't need a weapon. Her entire presence screamed authority, the kind that came from years of commanding men in the harshest corners of the world. "Officer Kane," she said, her tone like a blade sliding from its sheath. "I suggest you choose your next words carefully." And that was the moment Kane's bravado cracked. His face paled as recognition finally dawned. He had seen her before, not just in town but in an article passed around the department months ago. A Special Forces operative decorated with honors who had returned home after years overseas. The woman standing before him wasn't just mommy. She was someone who had stared down warlords, dismantled terror cells, and survived where most wouldn't. The crowd had gone silent. Ethan looked at his mother, pride swelling in his chest. Kane took a half step back, suddenly very aware that he had picked the wrong family to mess with. And Elena? She hadn't even begun. The air in the parking lot seemed to thicken. Conversations at the nearby tables of the coffee shop died down. Even the sound of traffic on the main road felt muted, like the world itself was holding its breath. Officer Kane, once towering with arrogance, now shifted on his feet, suddenly aware that he was standing in front of someone whose presence demanded respect. Elena Morales didn't move quickly, nor did she raise her voice. Her composure alone was enough to pin Kane to the spot. She crossed her arms loosely, tilting her head in the way she always did when she sized up an adversary, whether in a battlefield overseas or in a parking lot back home. "Ethan," she said again, her voice calm but firm. "Go wait in the SUV." Her son didn't hesitate. He shot one last glare at Kane, then moved toward their vehicle. Kane, in a last-ditch attempt to reclaim dominance, snapped, "Hold it, kid. You're not free to leave until I say so." That was his mistake. Elena's gaze flicked to Kane, sharp as a blade. "Officer," she said in a tone that could freeze fire, "you do not give orders to my son." Kane's jaw tightened. He was used to people folding when he barked at them, used to civilians shrinking back. But Elena wasn't shrinking. She was advancing, not with physical steps, but with every ounce of silent authority radiating from her. He tried to laugh it off. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I was just doing my job. Kids hanging around in cars like that, well, it looks bad. You never know what they're up to." Elena arched an eyebrow. "Interesting. So your job includes harassing minors, mocking their families, and making baseless accusations?" Kane stiffened. "I didn't harass him. I was conducting a lawful inquiry." "Really?" Elena's voice was calm, deliberate, surgical. "Because from where I stand, it sounds like you profiled a teenager for sitting in his car. You insulted his mother, and now you're scrambling to cover your tracks." A murmur rippled through the bystanders. Several had pulled out their phones, quietly recording. Kane noticed, and his throat went dry. This wasn't how things usually went. Normally, he'd bark louder, make his presence overwhelming, and people would shrink. But here, every move he made seemed smaller compared to Elena's steady composure. He tried a different tactic. "Look, Mrs. Morales." "Captain," Elena cut in smoothly. Kane blinked. "What?" She didn't blink. "Captain Morales, U.S. Army Special Forces." It was like the ground shifted under his feet. He had heard her name before. He remembered the briefing email that had circulated in the department months ago, about honoring a local veteran. At the time, he had scoffed and deleted it, not realizing she lived in his very precinct. But standing here now, seeing the sharpness in her eyes, the unshakable calm in her stance, it clicked. Elena took a step closer. "I've led men twice your size through missions you can't even begin to imagine. I've faced warlords who would make you pale in comparison, and I've seen men break under pressure far less than what you're feeling right now. So let me be very clear, Officer Kane. You're done intimidating my son." Kane's mouth went dry. He stammered, I wasn't intimidating." "You were," she cut in. "You thought you could laugh at me in front of him. You thought you could puff up your chest and make a boy feel small. That ends here." The crowd was silent. Even Ethan, sitting in the SUV now, was frozen, watching his mother dismantle Kane without so much as raising her voice. Kane tried to push back, desperate to salvage the situation. "With all due respect, Captain, you're not in uniform here. This is civilian ground. I'm the law here, not you." Elena's lips curved into the faintest smile. "You're right. This is civilian ground, which means you're accountable. Not just to your badge, but to every person standing here watching. And right now, they're not seeing the law. They're seeing a man who abuses authority." A woman in the crowd spoke up. "Yeah, we saw you harassing that kid before she got here." Another voice chimed in. "I got it all on video." Kane's face flushed crimson. He turned toward the bystanders. "Put the phones away. This is an active situation." But Elena stepped forward again, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "No, let them record. Transparency is the only thing protecting people from bullies in uniform." Kane opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His mind was spinning, searching for a way to reassert control, but every path he thought of led straight into the wall of Elena's calm dominance. She leaned in just slightly, her eyes locked on his. "Tell me, officer, do you laugh at all mothers? Or just the ones you assume can't fight back?" Her words struck like a sniper's bullet. Kane swallowed hard. His hands, usually steady, trembled slightly at his belt. The silence stretched for several seconds before Elena finally straightened. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to my son. You're going to apologize to me. Then you're going to leave this parking lot before I make a call that you will regret for the rest of your career." It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact, delivered in the calm, matter-of-fact tone of someone who had carried out consequences far harsher in her line of duty. Kane's breath hitched. He glanced at the crowd, at the phones recording, at the boy watching from the SUV. His pride screamed at him not to fold, but his gut told him folding was the only way to survive this moment. And for the first time in his career, Officer Bradley Kane felt something foreign bubbling inside him. Fear. The parking lot was frozen in silence, every set of eyes locked on Officer Kane. His chest rose and fell faster than he wanted anyone to notice, but Elena Morales noticed everything. Years of reading body language under fire had trained her to pick up on the smallest tells, and right now Kane's bravado was crumbling. He forced a laugh, one that came out dry and hollow. Okay, maybe I came off a little strong. No harm meant. Just doing my job, you know how it is." Elena didn't flinch. She kept her eyes on him, steady and unrelenting. "Your job isn't to belittle people. Your job isn't to mock families. Your job is to protect and serve, both of which you failed to do the second you opened your mouth." Kane's face darkened. He felt the weight of the bystanders' cameras, the judgment in their eyes. A part of him wanted to lash out, to snap back with force, but something in Elena's calm presence cut him off before he could even try. It wasn't just her words. It was the knowledge, and now undeniable, that this woman was not someone to be trifled with. Still, pride clawed at his throat. "Look, ma'am, Captain, whatever. We can just let this go. Nobody needs to file a complaint." That earned him another ripple from the crowd. A man near the front scoffed. "Funny, the cop doesn't want complaints when he's the one caught." Elena didn't look at the crowd. She stayed locked on Kane. "You want this to go away? Then own up to what you did. Right here, right now." Kane's jaw tightened. His hand twitched at his side. He wanted to bark, to regain control, but the rational part of his brain whispered that he was outnumbered, outflanked, and, worst of all, exposed. Finally, through gritted teeth, he muttered, "Fine, I'm sorry." Elena's expression didn't change. Louder, Kane swallowed. His throat felt like sandpaper. "I said I'm sorry." Ethan, watching from the SUV, sat taller, his chest swelling with a mix of relief and pride. His mother hadn't just defended him. She had flipped the entire power dynamic. But Elena wasn't finished. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly. "Say it to my son." Kane's face flushed deep red. Every instinct in him screamed against it. Apologize to a teenager? To a kid he'd just mocked? In front of a crowd recording on their phones? It was humiliation of the highest order. But Elena's silence pressed on him like a weight, and the eyes of the crowd left him no escape. Slowly, he turned toward the SUV. His voice cracked as he called out, "Kid, I'm sorry, all right?" I shouldn't have said what I said. Ethan opened the door and stepped out, his heart pounding. For the first time, he saw Kane not as an untouchable authority figure, but as a man cornered by the truth. You shouldn't have, Ethan said evenly, surprising himself with the strength in his tone. The crowd murmured again, nodding in approval. Kane looked back at Elena, desperate for an out. But Elena wasn't done yet. Now, she said, you're going to leave this lot, and you're going to think twice the next time you decide to flex your badge on someone who can't fight back. Because the world is watching, even when you think it isn't. Kane's hand twitched toward his radio. For a moment it looked like he might call for backup, try to spin the situation in his favor. But then his eyes flicked back to the cameras, to the calm fire in Elena's expression, and he hesitated. He muttered something under his breath, turned sharply, and stomped back to his cruiser. The slam of the door echoed like a gunshot. The patrol car pulled out of the lot with a screech of tires, but it didn't erase the humiliation burning on his face. The crowd began to disperse, but not without murmurs of approval. She handled him like a pro. About time someone stood up to him. Did you see his face when she said captain? Several people approached Elena, thanking her for standing up. She offered a polite nod but didn't linger in the praise. Instead, she turned to Ethan, her expression softening. You okay? She asked. Ethan nodded. Yeah, better now. Mom, that was incredible. Elena allowed herself a faint smile. It wasn't incredible. It was necessary. Bullies only back down when someone stands taller. Ethan studied her for a moment, the pride in his chest swelling. For years, she had downplayed what she did, insisting she was just working in logistics or nothing exciting. But today, he saw her in full, not just as his mom, but as the soldier, the leader, the warrior who had carried those titles long before he was born. But the story didn't end there, because while Kane drove away, his humiliation festered. He gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. His career had survived complaints before, his arrogance usually carrying him through, but this was different. This was public. There were videos. And the sting of being dressed down by a woman, by a mom took in front of half the town, that was something he couldn't swallow. By the time he reached the station, his mind was already racing. He stormed inside, heading straight for the supervisor's office. Lieutenant Parks, an older man with thinning hair and a weary look, glanced up as Kane barged in. What now, Bradley? Parks sighed. Kane slammed a hand on the desk. That Morales woman, she's dangerous. She interfered with a lawful investigation. Parks raised an eyebrow. The decorated Special Forces veteran? I know exactly who she is. What did you do? Kane bristled. I didn't do anything. She escalated. She made a scene in front of a crowd. They were recording. Good, Parks cut in. Then it's on video. And if I had to bet, that video won't make you look like the hero. Kane's mouth opened, then closed. Parks leaned back in his chair, pinching the bridge of his nose. Bradley, you've had warnings before. Complaints. Do you realize how thin the ice is under your feet? Kane's face twisted. So that's it? We just let her humiliate me? She can't get away with this. Parks fixed him with a hard stare. She didn't humiliate you. You did that to yourself. But Kane wasn't listening. His pride, his anger, his bruised ego, it all boiled into a single resolve. He wasn't going to let Elena Morales walk away as the untouchable hero. Not without a fight. And so, while Elena and Ethan drove home unaware of what was brewing, Kane was already plotting his next move. Elena Morales drove in silence, her hands steady on the wheel. Ethan sat in the passenger seat, still buzzing with adrenaline. The encounter replayed in his head like a highlight reel. The way Kane had crumbled, the way his mom had stood unshaken. Mom, he said finally, breaking the quiet. Does that kind of thing happen to you a lot? Elena's eyes stayed on the road. Bullies are everywhere. Some wear uniforms, some don't. The trick isn't to avoid them. It's to know how to face them. Ethan nodded slowly. He'd always known his mom was strong, but today was different. Today, he'd seen the full scope of who she was, not just the woman who tucked him in at night, but the soldier who had commanded respect in battlefields he couldn't even imagine. But what neither of them knew was that Officer Bradley Kane wasn't finished. Back at the station, Kane sat hunched over his desk, scrolling furiously through his phone. Videos of the parking lot confrontation were already circulating online. Local pages, neighborhood groups, even a regional news outlet had picked it up. His name wasn't mentioned yet, but anyone in town who saw his face would know. His humiliation deepened with every share, every comment. Finally, someone put Kane in his place. About time that cop got called out. That woman was a beast. The words stung worse than any disciplinary report. His pride, the one thing he clung to above all else, was shattered. And in his anger, he made a reckless decision. He slammed his laptop shut, stormed out of the precinct, and drove to Morales' home. Ethan was in the living room when headlights cut across the blinds. He peered outside. "Mom, there's a cruiser in the driveway." Elena was already moving, her instincts sharp. She stepped outside before Kane could even knock. Her stance was calm, but her eyes were locked on him like a sniper sighting in. "Officer Kane," she said evenly, "you're off duty." "Why are you here?" Kane's face was red, his jaw tight. "You think you can humiliate me? You think you can just strip me of authority in front of half the town? You don't scare me, Morales." Elena didn't flinch. "If I didn't scare you, you wouldn't be here." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Kane's hand twitched near his holster, not in a full draw, but in a gesture meant to intimidate. Elena's eyes flicked down, then back up, cool and unimpressed. "You really want to make that mistake?" she asked softly. Kane's throat bobbed. He wasn't used to being read so easily, so calmly dismantled before he even acted. But he pressed forward, his pride too wounded to back down. "You don't run this town, I do. People like you think you're heroes, but out here the badge is what matters." That was when a new set of headlights appeared. Another vehicle pulled up, but this wasn't a patrol car. It was a dark government SUV. The doors opened and two men in suits stepped out. "Kane," one of them called sharply. "Stand down." Kane blinked, his bluster faltering. "What the hell?" The taller agent strode forward, flashing credentials. "Department of Defense Liaison. Captain Morales is under federal protection." "You're already on thin ice, officer." "Don't make it worse." Kane's stomach dropped. Federal protection? What did that even mean? He looked at Elena, who hadn't moved an inch, her calm gaze still fixed on him. She finally spoke. "You should have walked away, Kane, but you don't know how. And that's why men like you fall." The agent stepped closer. "Officer, get back in your cruiser. You'll be hearing from Internal Affairs." Kane's hand twitched again as if he might protest, but the weight of the moment finally crushed him. His shoulders sagged. He turned back toward his patrol car, muttering curses under his breath. The humiliation was complete. He had come to reclaim power, and instead he left more broken than before. The cruiser pulled away into the night. Ethan stepped outside, wide-eyed. "Mom, who are you?" Elena exhaled slowly. "I'm your mother. That's the only title that matters here." The agents gave her a nod. "We'll handle the fallout. Videos like that spread fast, and the department can't afford to bury this one." "He's finished." When they left, Ethan turned to her again. "You knew this would happen, didn't you?" "You knew he wouldn't let it go." Elena shook her head. "I knew men like him always push too far. But I also knew that when they do, the truth has a way of catching up." Ethan let her words sink in. Tonight had changed everything. He no longer saw her as just the mom who reminded him to eat vegetables or asked about his grades. He saw the leader, the warrior, the protector, someone who didn't just talk about justice but demanded it. As they went back inside, Ethan glanced at her one more time. "Mom? Yes? When I grow up, I want to be like you." Elena's expression softened. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, be better than me." "That's the mission, Ethan, always better." And as the night settled over Clearwater, the Morales family closed their door, their bond stronger than ever, while across town, Officer Bradley Kane sat alone in his cruiser, staring into the dark, realizing his career, his reputation, and his illusion of power had all been dismantled by the quiet, unstoppable force of one mother who refused to back down.